Okay, just to recap, we're looking at the image here of the lightning that has been embedded into the scene, and he is going to eventually be rotoscoped out in such a way that he passes on front of the image. So we already have a bit of masking going on here in that we have a subtract mask being applied via a track matte layer, and that mask has been given a 2-pixel blur just to make it look more natural in the video. So those are the first two things that we've done. We've mapped it geometrically into the scene. We've masked it back to create a little bit more of a convincing look that it is in fact on that whiteboard because it is behind that. And the next thing we're going to do then is we're going to apply a blend mode to try and get it to look like it is actually on that surface. So at the moment it's set to normal, so it's just kind of plunked. I'll just get him out of the frame for a sec. And you know, we want to apply the blend mode. We can try a few. We could go with multiply. We get a little bit of the detail from behind. We could in fact then also hit our T key, bring down the opacity. There's a few ways that you could approach it depending on what you want to do. Screen would allow you to kind of just isolate the lightning forks and keep the rest of the image visible. So again, it depends on the image and it depends on what you want to do. Now, the blend mode, you kind of know where these are now. We've done add, screen, we've done multiply. There's other ones like overlay and more variable ones. That one, for example, gives you a nice kind of mix of both multiply and screen, in that it will multiply the dark parts, screen the bright parts, and allow you to get a little bit of variability in. But remember, you're always going to be doing some sort of color correction with this as well. So I might go down to my vibrance now because I don't like that kind of greeny blue. I want it to be more the same kind of color as what's going on in the background. Take down the saturation actually. And that starts to get us something closer to what we're looking for. Another thing that you can do actually when you're embedding these is you can open the layer, lightning for example. Oh, that's already been tracked. I can't do that. Okay, I'll come back to that. I was going to say we can mask the individual layer as well. Anyway, I don't want to confuse things, so I'm just going to crack on and we'll come back to it. Now, I'm going to start this from scratch, and I'm going to include the part where I map the object onto the whiteboard. So I'll just keep our rotoscope background layer where it is, and I have my lightning image ready to go. I can also use Jane. I can use, you know, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You know, you might want to have something kind of in roughly the same aspect as the thing you're mapping onto, just to make your life a little bit easier. Right. So I'll bring down the lightning. We'll use the lightning and bring it down, and that will, I think I missed there somehow. There we go. Now it's much bigger, so I can just, you know, shift and scale that down. Now we're going to use an effect called corner pin. Corner pin is another one of those tools that you're going to come back to time and time again, because it is one of the main tools used in motion tracking, or motion track compositing, we call it. Now it's a very straightforward effect, and you get it same place as everything else. I can never remember which section it's in. It's in the distort section. It's called corner pin. You drag it out there, or you drag it down there, however you decide to get it on there. It doesn't really matter. Now the effect itself simply has 4 control points at each corner of the object. Now again, remember, everything is a rectangle in After Effects. It doesn't matter. Everything is contained within some sort of a rectangular or square shape. And we can modify these in a number of ways. We have little targets here that we can drag out, and we can say, right, I want you to put the top left control point here, and boom, it goes exactly where you want it to go. And then you say, right, okay, I want this one here, and you might need to switch it off for a moment to get the lower left, for example. Might be tricky because you can't quite see it, but you can use the guiding line there. And then the lower right, we want it to go, let's say, here. switch it back on, and our object is pretty much, you know, where we want it to be. I think that one went a little bit off, and this one also looks like it needs to be tweaked slightly. You might need to eyeball it sometimes as well, but it's not a huge problem. So this is allowing us to get stuff onto surfaces. And the other thing that we could do, in fact I should have done it before I applied the corner pin, so bear with me, is we can open up the layer and we can say, right, I don't want it to have a very hard edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click my mask to give it a mask all the way around, and then I'm just going to give that a feather of 2 pixels, and now that is feathered, and that should allow me to get a little bit of a softer edge when I put it in there. All right, so it's back to the corner pin then, and same thing as before. Now I've just realized something there. I should not have put that mask on it for reasons I knew when I was doing it, but I did it anyway. Right. Okay. You can't mask. Maybe you can. Now masking. Oh no, sorry, it's fine. Beg your pardon. Masking and corner pinning are actually tricky, and you'll see why in a moment. No, that I got away with that because I was only masking off the very edges. Sorry, now I'm confusing things, but bear with me. Because the next thing I want to do is I want to, you know, mask off that part of the cabinet so it looks like it's behind. Now, this is where if I draw a mask now on my lightning.jpg, watch what happens. Well, nothing in that instance. That's because I have it in the wrong order. Nothing again, right? So it's very unpredictable, and generally speaking, when you have a corner pin applied to something, you can't just go masking that object. Okay, so I'm going to delete that mask. I'm actually going to delete this one too because it's just sitting there in the way and I don't want to be looking at it. But the problem arises when the layer is still represented as an object in its original position. When it's corner pinned, the layer doesn't really move. The pinning kind of offsets things, but in terms of your masks are always going to be stuck to the original layer. So, hey presto, no surprises, we need a track mat. So I'm going to call this one mat corner cabinet. And I'm going to switch it off, and I can also switch off the lightning.jpg just so I can see what I'm doing. Zoom in, spacebar, and okay, we can go a bit more detail this time. Right, and that should give us what we need. And I'm going to need to set that to subtract and switch back on my lightning.jpg and select track mat. Sorry, wrong layer. The layer beneath it is what I should have been going for. Alpha mat. Oh God. Okay, hang on now. I've got other layers in here now that are in the way. That's it. Yeah, my shy layers were in the way there. Okay, we'll go again. Alpha mat corner cabinet, and there you go. Okay, so now I can just do a few little things, feather those edges, and now we have something a little bit more realistic to look at. Okay, so I'll just fit that to screen so you can see it. And from then in, we go down to our lightning.jpg and we do all of our, you know, screen overlay, what have you. In this case, I'll go multiply and take down the opacity slightly. And now I have something, you know, reasonably well mapped into the scene. And now when I rotoscope him, I will be rotoscoping the track mat layer. Okay, remember there's a few things that need to be done here for us to make this work. We need to offset the the animation. Okay, so the animation is going to need to be animated onto our corner cabinet. So our rotoscoping will need to, you know, very loosely be like that. Okay, now obviously that's not a detailed mask, but it gives you the idea. We need to, because we're using the mask to make the lightning image transparent, then that also needs to go on our track matte layer, just like our cabinet was matted out using a mask on our track matte layer also. So granted, it can be a little bit confusing when you're trying to figure out the order of things. Okay, you know, you need to kind of figure out, okay, well, I need a track matte for this layer, but he's underneath that layer, so how do I matte him if I can't matte the... it gets kind of confusing. Much more confusing than our simple text example that we did last week. But this is where, you know, practicing it, once you get it once, the penny drops, and then you'll be able to implement that, you know, over and over and over again.